Very good, very good, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. It's June the 7th, time for our committee meeting of the whole. Before we get started, I just want to take a quick moment to thank all of our great staff of the city who work so diligently to prepare our temporary council facilities here. All of the individuals at IT and facilities, I think Denise, thank you very much for looking after everything there. Did I miss anyone who else was involved?
No, those are the main ones. IT and Denise.
Very good. Thank you very much. It looks great. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't really sure what we were in for here, but for temporary facilities, I think that you did a wonderful job. So thank you very much. Everybody's had an opportunity to look at the agenda. Most committee, we still have a few motions to make, I think. Everybody's okay with the agenda? We usually do a motion for that, don't we? Yes, I think we do. Councillor Khan.
I'll move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Very good. Well, it's honored today to have a contingent from the Royal Canadian Legion here for the flags presentation. And the President, Kathy Hobbs, is here. I'll let you introduce your team and tell us what you're up to.
Thank you. Actually, my team will start with Veteran Voices. Al Cameron, I'm sure you all know Al. He's responsible for, among many things, recording the story of veterans through the different wars and conflicts. So he's the founding, I almost said founding father. And Arnie McCaskill, he has been extremely active in the Poppy and Remembrance Day Poppy, poster, essay, and poem contest. He's done a lot of work there, so Arnie is a Legion member. Al is also a Legion member, but equally as important, Veterans Voices. So Al will kick us off if that's all right.
Absolutely.
So I'll stand, I guess.
That's complete. However you're more comfortable.
I'm more comfortable this way, so it's making my voice over a little better. But my name is Al Cameron. I'm founding executive director of Veterans Voices of Canada. And I'm from living in Sylvan Lake, from Nova Scotia originally, but I'm living in Sylvan Lake now. And I'm basically here to, if you don't know about what Flags of Remembrance is, firstly, it's an amazing tribute that we began back in 2014 in Sylvan Lake. As far as Veterans Voices, I'll touch a little more on Flags of Remembrance in a second, but Veterans Voices of Canada, I founded Veterans Voices of Canada back in 2005. The main drive or the main mission for Veterans Voices of Canada was to travel across Canada, document veterans for history and education. So my organizational influence, I guess, was my television, my career was in television. So as a videographer, producer with some of the major broadcasters across Canada. I knew news wasn't my thing. I basically looked at a 13-year career in television to prepare me for doing what I do, which was basically video production. And in a more important way, documenting veterans for history and education. So since 2005, I have sat with over 2,000 veterans, documented their stories on camera for history and education. They're donated to schools, museums, and libraries across Canada. So that's the main drive of Veterans Voices of Canada. We honor past and present veterans through historical documentation, tributes, and displays across Canada. And that's where Flags of Remembrance comes in. Back in 2014, probably 13, I guess, driving back and forth from Sylvan Lake to Red Deer, I saw all of these amazing empty fields. And I thought, what a great place to have a tribute, a visual tribute. We all, Veterans Voice of Canada and the Legion, all believe Remembrance Day is every day, or should be every day. So I thought, well, maybe what we should do is extend remembrance. So it so happened that the week of Friday that I planned on putting these 120 flags up, representing 128,000 Canadian killed in missing in action, we were going to go to one of these fields Friday morning after everyone went to work. We would go put up 120 flagpoles. One Canadian flag representing 1,000 souls. So we started putting those flags up. So when everyone came back from work that day, they're going to see all these flags. No wonder what the heck is all about. And they found out pretty soon what it was all about. represented 128,000 Canadian killed and missing in action. But just so happened, this 3 months of preparation for this Friday, that same week, Patrice Vincent was taken down. He was run down in a shopping center in Quebec. And then that following Wednesday is when Nathan Cirillo was taken out of the national monument. Then that Friday is when we put those flags up. So the amazing feedback that we got from this nationally, just on international, was unbelievable. Right after that, we decided this is a good thing, it's got to continue. It was only going to be a one year thing. So the amazing tribute that it took was, that it is, turned into a fundraiser as well. People, and it was when the oil fields were rolling really nicely, the good times in Alberta, which are here again, I'm sure. But people were coming up to us and they were just donating $200, $500. I had a guy pass me $1,000 that one day to me personally to help us do what we were doing. And at that point, I thought, this is what we have to do. It's great people are supporting the organization, but I felt we had to give back more. That's where these plaques of honor came into play. Okay, so what this is, it's a 6x6 acrylic maple leaf, and they have the names of past or present serving. They were military that year, but we changed it to military and first responders. So anybody can sponsor one of these plaques. We ask for minimum donation to sponsor one of these plaques. And the idea is for people to walk the flag line and read those names. It's another way to remember, okay? So in my great uncle's instance, I guess, or example, he was killed in action on July 25th, 1944. He was a North Nova Scotia Highlander D-Day veteran. And I heard all about him through my mom, who basically waved him off to war back in 1943. She can still remember him walking up the driveway, and he never did come back. So that would be my tribute to him. I also have veterans who served in Afghanistan. So last year, I put one in the name of one of my cousins who served in Afghanistan. It'd be the same thing. Okay, so the idea is walk the flag line, read the names, and that way remember again. So we've got 128 plaques. People will walk that flag line, which in most cases is about 1 kilometer long. I don't know if any of you have seen the ones in Silver Lake. It's a pretty emotional thing, I think, when you drive past those flags. And I mean, here in Lacombe, there's a little tighter tie to that as well with Byron Ruff being the last Canadian soldier killed in Afghanistan. So there's a really amazing tie to Lacombe, to Flags of Remembrance. So that's basically what Flags of Remembrance is. This flag, and would you want to pass this across and just take a peek at it?
So Alex, if I could just interrupt you for one moment, is it your intent that individuals continue to purchase these flags, or is that?
No, it's an annual thing. So it actually turned into, like I said, a really amazing fundraiser for us because it costs money to do what Veterans Voices of Canada does. And that was a really, people were donating anyway. So we may as well have just added the plaque of honor as well, right? So again, I'm in Sylvan Lake, so I've got plans for other things that we do. Continue doing the documentation. I'd like to have 3 of me across Canada doing the actual veteran documentation. I can't go across Canada. I just can't get everywhere all at once, kind of thing. So I'd like to have 3 of me across Canada. I've got a history, interest, and learning center plan that we're doing. Over the years, I've been a collector of militaria. Veterans and their families have donated to Veterans Voices of Canada their memorabilia with the promise that it will be on display, public display eventually. So those costs are all helped to be covered through Flags of Remembrance as well as some other programs that we have going. But the really cool thing about this is we've got 6 across Canada this year, including Lacombe. And my intention was, one of the things I always felt was all veteran advocacy or veteran groups should work together to help each other succeed in each of their missions. And the Lacombe Legion has been an amazing supporter of Veterans Voices of Canada from pretty much day one since I started anything in this area. Now I'm a member of the Lacombe Legion. And I wanted the Legion here to become a part of it. So I approached them last year and said, this is what we want to do. The really cool tribute part about it, we all know what that is an amazing thing. But unfortunately, there's also a business side of it. So this is where it comes to help each other. So the sponsorships that we get from each of the sites, here could say Lacombe, for example, we would be donating, we're partnered together this year, Lacombe Legion and Veterans Voice of Canada. So we're supporting each other in this. It helps us both in both ways. Through the tribute, it shows that we show tribute and honor to our veterans, past and present, but it also shows that we're supporting each other in other ways that are necessary to help each of our organizations to run. And I'm not a big fan of talking about the money aspect of it, that's not, but unfortunately it's a part of it. So yeah, they jumped on board this year, signed on, and we're partners this year in Lacombe with the Legion. And we're hoping that we get some really cool, amazing support from the town, or the city, I'm sorry, town. So that's what we're here for, and I'm going to pass it off to these guys, and we're going to talk about just how important it is for the Legion to be part of this as well, because I know they're really supportive of it. If you got any more questions, maybe afterwards or after Kathy's done, I guess.
Well, given that you're obviously driven to see that the flagpoles are completely filled, I think you'll find that the people in Lacombe are extremely generous and respectful. So these will sell out rather quickly. How does one go about acquiring one of these flags?
We do have the website. You can go to vetvoicecan.org, and that's where there's a form to fill out, and you can make the donation through there as well. It'll tell you how much the minimum donation is and all that kind of a thing. And then the Legion, I believe, have forms available on site as well. Okay, and yeah, so that's one of the things about Lacombe that I found. Lacombe, especially in this area, I find are very supportive of anything military or history involved, and that's what really I thought it should be here. You guys are an amazing supportive town for anything military or history, and it's pretty obvious whenever anything is done with the Legion here that support is amazing. So it's a really cool this kind of thing. So I do appreciate that. I'll have some.
And that means, I guess, you have to listen to me again. Flags Remembrance Veterans Voices of Canada is very personal to me as the daughter of not one, but two war veterans. Al even had the pleasure of interviewing my mother at 98, and all she did was flirt with him. I was so embarrassed. Anyway, I was away for a good 6 months, Mom passed in 99. And so that was the last veteran in my intimate family, immediate family, sorry. Here in Lacombe, one of the better well-known World War II veterans was Nick Melnichuk. He too passed last year, December 28th. So the fact that such a patriotic tribute of 128 flags flying, we're hoping here in Lacombe at Missioner Park, if you give your approval, would bring renown to the city of Lacombe, more renowned. It is such an, how many of you have been to a Flags Remembrance ceremony? You've really missed a moving tribute. Everybody probably knows a veteran in their family, a grandpa, you're all very young, grandma, grandpa, great-grandpa. And to honor them in this way, as you saw Cecil Proudfoot, that is one that flew at Sylvan Lake. And we brought it down, and unfortunately, we've not been able to find any of his descendants here in this area, so we still have it waiting to present to him. So Legion, that's our goal. Remembrance of the sacrifice that was made by the men and women from here, surrounding communities. That's what the Legion stands for, lest we forget. 128 Canada flags is a surefire way of keeping that remembrance alive. So that's what I'm here for today, is to ask for permission for us to access Missioner Park September 11th and until after Remembrance Day, and then the flags come down. And I hope if you grant that, you can all be there, it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just have one, actually 2 more minutes?
Certainly.
One of the things, Kathy had asked, has anybody been to one of the ceremonies? So that came through this idea, and I should probably explain what the ceremony is like. We have VIPs who speak at the opening before the actual ceremony. Usually a Silver Cross monk, some local VIPs come to speak. And then in the case of Sylvan Lake, I'll introduce what's going to happen. I believe Kathy or somebody is going to introduce how it happens here in Macomb. But directly 12 o'clock noon, Alberta time, that's when the flags begin to unfurl, okay? But there's a really cool thing about it. When I first did this, I thought it was important to make that a really emotional and impacting thing. So right at 12 o'clock noon, we've got 2 horses with 2 veterans on the horseback, and 2 veteran Afghanistan veterans riding this year. Each of them holding a Canadian flag as well as the Veterans Voice Canada flag, Flags of Remembrance flag. But right at 12 noon, we've also got a pipe and drum band. Previous to this year, Arnie was in my pipe and drum band. Sylvan Lake, but Lacombe is going to steal him this year, I think. So 12 o'clock noon, the horses begin to walk. The band begins to play Amazing Grace, and they walk all the way down the flag line. As each of the horses pass the flag line, we've got a person on each one of those flags, and the flags aren't flying yet. But as one horse passes each of the flags will unfurl one by one. So I'm thinking of it right now. I can picture it's pretty emotional. Getting all this fun here, I'm thinking about it. But it's a pretty emotional thing when you see these flags unfurl one by one with Amazing Grace being played. And I've never seen so many teary eyes in my life. When we've got the last time we had our ceremony before COVID, we had about 750, 800 people at the ceremony. We've got military personnel there. We've got first responders. We've got community. It's growing. It's a really cool ceremony, an amazing ceremony. In Windsor, Ontario, where we have our site there, it's right on the Detroit River. It's right by the Ambassador Bridge, so the Americans are right across the river. And when we do it there, my reps down in Windsor actually get phone calls from the States. This is the first year anyway. You know what it is now. But what the heck are you guys doing over there? You guys don't fly flags like this. So that's pretty cool to hear that, right? So it's impacting, it makes a difference, and we're growing across Canada. The intention is to have 120 units across Canada eventually simultaneously. That's my goal. I don't know if I'll be around when that happens, but I think it'll be a few years before it happens, maybe sooner than I think, but it's a really amazing ceremony. It really is. And I think anybody who is there, if your eyes are dry by the time you leave one of these ceremonies, you couldn't have been there. But it's pretty amazing. So I wanted to give you a better idea of actually what the actual ceremony is composed of. So at the end of the ceremony, or November 12th, September 11th, they fly. November 12th, they come down. And there's a closing ceremony where the plaque and the flag are taken down and they're presented to each of the sponsors. So the flag that flew and the plaque that was there go to the sponsors. Okay, so I think I covered it enough. But any questions? All right. Yeah.
Cecil Proudfoot, my parents rented his farm after we retired, came to town, so may have some connections if you need some information there. And then my grandfather was that they were obviously knew each other very well. They were together in the lodge, and they weren't innocent while they were there, put it that way. It's one of the stories. But anyways, yeah, so if you need some assistance with maybe some contact for Cecil Proudfoot, yeah, it would be our family's been around the Macomb for 4 generations. So my grandfather went to war as well at that time too. So, and the great grandfather too. So yeah, if you contact me later, I'll do my best to try to help you out.
Mr. Collector.
So the flags, you say at Missioner Park, like in Sylvan, they're along the highway or whatever, is that the intent here as well? As far as further in, or where would you find them?
It would be just probably 8 to 10 feet off of the roadway there. In Sylvan Lake, I've got them on the highway, on Highway 11. That's where it began. They'll always be there. I've got 2 rows of flags, 120 flags on each side. But what we do is I moved it down to Centennial Park right by the lake. It's safer. You wouldn't believe the things people do to get a picture of a row of flags on the highway. I've seen people actually on the highway with their kids, with vehicles flying by 130, and it was just too much. It was on a main highway. So that's why we wanted this Michener Park, because it's not on a main highway. It's safer for sure. Sylvan Lake, same kind of thing. I had to move it out there to make it safer. And then people can walk the flag line and read those flags, the plaques of honor, like they can in Michener Park. You've got that parking there. People can pull off. It's so much safer that way. So.
Councilor Gillespie.
Thank you, Chair Creasy, or Mayor Creasy, I should say in this case. The flags then would be between Highway 12 and the parking area, is that correct?
I heard Highway 12. but that's-
Just for the location of the flags, they
Yeah,
will
they'll
be
be-
between the parking area and the highway?
Oh, okay. And they would be there, and now these flag poles are obviously not permanent flag poles in this case, right?
Yeah. So what? Do you want to talk about it?
This is Artie's task.
Well, I'm looking after the flagpoles, but, yeah, they'll be anchored there for a month, and then we'll take the anchors out, and if we get the go-ahead to do it again next year, we'll put the anchors back in and have them up again for another month, hopefully.
No, I'm just thinking that in that area, I think there's quite a few utilities along
We
there.
have maps from the city already indicating where water lines and sewer lines are, and we have a pretty good idea where things should
Yeah,
go.
there's probably enough room in there for you. I was just, would it be an issue to be on the other side of the parking lot?
On the baseball side?
Yeah. Certainly not as visible.
We're just, I don't know if the baseball will probably be in use quite a bit there. They're just the end of the way of a lot of people. Because some of the flags are missing once in a while.
Yeah, I was. Are farmers markets done this? Still have some.
I believe they extend into.
Yeah. So farmers markets would be there at the same time. It's not an issue for you.
It'll be in between the parking lot, the strip of grass between the parking lot and the highway.
Yeah, if you're at the farmer's market, people drive down there and they actually use that space a little bit, but I much prefer the flags than the people driving there, so.
That's, if you don't mind me jumping in here, that's one of the things we ask Sylvan Lake when we do this work, or any place that we do this, we ask for permission. Basically, we shut down Centennial Park for the day. And I know it's from 8 o'clock in the morning for setup until about 1:30 in the afternoon kind of thing, so until we're cleared out. But the idea is, and I get that permission from Sylvan Lake every year, because they know the people that come to see this, and it'll be September 11th to November 12th is when the flags will be there. But I know I've sat and watched busloads of visitors come, not to jump in the water, jump in the lake and take a swim. They've come to actually visit the flags, take pictures, and it brings a lot of attention, a lot of light on the area, for sure, you know, a lot of attention, spotlight. That's why Sylvan Lake allows us to do it every year, right there in Centennial Park, because there's a lot of visitors that come through. There's thousands of people that come through to see these. It's pretty amazing when you jump onto Facebook and you see random photos. I'm sure everybody here does Facebook, maybe a little bit. But you've got a cover photo of flag line in Sylvan Lake. Now you're going to see a cover photo of the flag line in the home. It just brings a lot of really, really good attention to the town. So that's, when you drive in, preferably to have them closer to the highway. That's a preference for that reason. Again, I'll just here, sorry guys.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Creasy. So we recently have a new culture and tourism coordinator with culture and tourism. So, you know, you may want to contact them for marketing and so forth. I'd be thrilled to help you out with that. So, anyways.
So as I suggested earlier, this is a council committee meeting, normally make motions on after this, but I think that you should continue with your plans. I would find it extremely unlikely that you will not be able to utilize the facility. We'll certainly have the CAO make sure that we're okay for placing the flags there, and perhaps organize some traffic calming measures there, whether that be through Public Works or the Police Service, and hopefully it's a very orderly and busy event. So
I guarantee it will be.
we appreciate all the work that the Lacombe Legion does, and Veterans Voices as well. So thank you for coming and presenting this evening. We appreciate it. And we look forward to.
I do have a letter. If approved, this is what will go out with Fisher and Park on it. So I brought a letter for everybody. They counted wrong. But your endorsement is on there as well. Thank you very much. And that, as I say, if Fisher Park is approved, that's exactly what this letter will say. And it will be okay. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And Mr. Ross, I'll phone you.
Great, thank you.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your night.
You as well.
It's really nice to see presentations like that. Or why, would you? Yeah. We've got Manager LaPointe with us now, and we can move on to item 4.1, the Connex eligibility and expansion. Eve, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, Mayor Creasy and Council. This evening, Council is receiving a high-level report on the possibilities of expanding the current Connex service. As you know, Lacombe FCSS manages and operates the Connex service and specifically targets seniors and those unable to access transportation due to mobility issues or illness. Those clients book the service for medical appointments, grocery shopping, banking, and access to local recreation opportunities. Outside of medical trips to Red Deer, the service is limited to a 20-kilometer radius around the city of Lacombe. Fees range from a $5 one-way trip within the local service area to $20 within the county, all the way up to $50 for medical trips to Red Deer. And there are some that actually exceed that if they're going on to Edmonton and Calgary as well. When looking at the possibility of expansion, it is first necessary to understand existing use patterns. Connex operates on a Monday to Friday schedule with the bulk of volume focused on a 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. window. Regular dialysis trips to Red Deer occur on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and local grocery and banking trips comprise the remainder of the reservations on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Connex utilizes 3 buses, 2 larger 16-passenger units, and 1 smaller that accommodates 4. The schedule does indicate some availability for the smaller unit. However, it wouldn't really serve as a reliable vehicle to build on a more extensive public transit service based on its limited capacity and variable scheduling. So what options are available for expanding the service? For the moment, that's operating mornings before 9 a.m. and evenings after 4:30 p.m., opening on weekends, perhaps expanding the rider eligibility, implementing a real-time schedule and dispatch technology, and we'll get to that a little bit later on in the presentation, and developing partnerships with other community agencies to explore synergies and build customized solutions. So how might that expansion look? The ideas that are put forward are fixed routes, on-demand systems, and a slightly modified on-demand system for assisting with any expansion plan. So first, we'll talk about fixed routes, and we should be most familiar with fixed routes. That's essentially the form of the previous regional transit system. Operators create set stops and times of service, so users come to expect a regular and reliable schedule. In this case, the opportunities that would be afforded to Connex would be maximizing the bus deployment, encouraging some form of intra-city transit. And of course, you'd be able to utilize the former stops and shelters. There are challenges, and we should be familiar with some of these challenges as well. The potential for low volume, inefficient use. There's high cost associated with regularly scheduled drivers, as well as high costs associated with bus replacements due to regular mileage, repairs, maintenance, and fuel. The potential does exist here for scheduling conflicts with medical trips and other existing core Connects functions. So of course, there's regular days that those things happen on, but there could be schedules outside of those regular days as well, depending on volume. So there could be some impact on medical trips and other core services. Optimizing service frequency and equitable service to all areas is unlikely with 3 buses. So trying to cover the entire city, you know, it's unlikely you could be everything to everybody with fixed routes at this point. And the fare structure would have to be reviewed. Almost certainly the revenues would be impacted, as you know, there should be an assessment done on impacts to existing users as well. As we know, fixed routes are relatively flexible by definition, and for many that means that's actually less convenient. And there are reliability concerns with a relatively small bus inventory and driver pool. You know, if things happened, there are challenges in terms of making sure the coverage is there. So on demand, you may have heard a little bit of on demand recently because Blackfalds moved in this direction, and there's some other municipalities moving in this direction. That's a more flexible solution when compared to conventional fixed routes. Users reserve trips as needed. Buses are directed to a predetermined stop or often straight to you know, wherever the client is located. Most on-demand services utilize third-party management software to handle the dispatching of buses. So the opportunities here, again, the flexibility is paramount in this situation, but there are a number of challenges. It's rather costly on a per ride basis. There still exists the potential for low volume and efficient use. So, you know, if somebody calls and they're the only person to use it, there might be one person on that bus, right? However, on the flip side of things, if demand increases exponentially, the costs are going to go up significantly as well. Some of these items we've heard, you know, again, fare structures is going to be impacted, as is, you know, possibly existing users. And we still have those reliability concerns. But in this specific instance, residents may struggle with technology and they may find the system inaccessible. And again, the limited pool of buses may limit the desired response time. And in fact, it probably would, especially if demand increased. Many of the solutions in these other communities were provided by, you know, contracted services where, you know, it was a complete solution. So they were also supplying the buses. So to break out the software, labor, and equipment may be challenging as well. And again, integrating that third-party software, even if you were able to take that step, you know, is an unknown at this point, and how that would work with the existing people, drivers, that's an unknown still at this point. So I'll call the third option On Demand Plus. And that really is it's an exciting opportunity, but it's new territory. Really a modified on-demand transit model where the system can operate with its current bus inventory, but allowing for the dispatch of private operator when the demand dictates. So there are a number of opportunities here. It would be very flexible and convenient. You'd still be able to encourage intercity transit. If it works well, it should be relatively easy to use. There's growth potential without having to add new buses, really, at this point, until you think there's time, you know, you're able to justify the purchase of new buses. You're able to manage peak periods, you know, that we were talking about, that reliability and response time. Accessing a third-party operator would allow that to happen during those times, and then you're able to operate on those shoulder periods with the existing complement of buses. because you can draw on that pool, obviously there's less of an impact on core service. If you were to partner with, say, an Uber, there might be brand recognition and confidence in the service immediately out of the gate. And again, you have redundancy. You get rid of some of those issues that you have if you're just relying on the existing complement of buses. It does present an opportunity to innovate, and it may result in some local employment opportunities. But it's not a perfect solution. Again, we'd be treading into new territory if this is a direction that was undertaken. So there's no best practices to emulate. So you're treading the, you're setting the trail here. One big concern is the cost. The annual software fee is there's a fee associated out of the gate with that, but probably the bigger concern is, again, if you're successful and demand is there, there's no way to cap this. And in fact, in the community of Innisfil, they started off with this grand plan of using taxis to accomplish their goals, and had a modest budget for it, thinking it would be received okay by the community, and it was received very well. And they exceeded their budget within the first quarter of operation. So you're almost penalized if you're successful in this situation. Lack of contracted operators could lead to long delays. Again, it's an unknown. We could have a number of people step up, but if you're working with a dedicated service provider, they have other things to do as well. And so, you may not be addressing that concern head on. You're partnering with a private corporation, so there's unknowns there, of course, and you still have to review that fare structure. So I'm trying to be as concise as possible. I think in terms of higher level, that's where I'll leave things, but I'm open to any questions and comments council may have.
Thank you, Manager Point. Appreciate it. Councilor Jacobson.
Sir, Guy, are you familiar with the subsidized taxi car program that's in Council Lake?
Yes, I am.
Great. I'm just curious. I know this is sort of not quite the same, but did you all chat with them about what they're paying for theirs, or what they budgeted, or anything like that?
As you indicated, it was out of scope, Councillor Jacobson. This was, as I understood it, it was to look at expanding the Connect service to address local transit concerns. So unfortunately, in this case, I did not talk to Sylvan Lake about the subsidized taxis.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I was just curious.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Guy, thank you for this. Now, one question I have, was there any consideration to look at a fixed route for certain times of day and then go to demand for the balance of it?
Yeah, that may be an option as well. Again, we could throw that in as a fourth option. I think that, again, these are options that are available to us, both fixed and on demand. If we wanted to do some sort of hybrid, I think that's definitely a possibility. But again, that small complement of buses is still going to limit your options here, I think, at this point.
Because really, we don't even know, we don't have any idea exactly what the demand is. Is there any thought process to doing a small pilot program to find out what kind of demand we have in the city before we put money?
Sorry, Councillor Gullickson, I was just going to say, I think, and I think you're absolutely right. I think the suggestion is if any of these options, if council wanted to pursue any of these options, I think it would be important to do that needs analysis. That the first time around, that needs analysis was not done. There was some work done around that. You could move straight into a pilot if you want, but I would suggest that it might be important to take that first step and really do the research to figure out what that demand may be.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to, before a lot of money is spent, to find out where we're at, because I think that's exactly what happened with Bolt. We got into that without realizing there wasn't a lot of demand. And I really would, before anything is decided, would like to do some kind of pilot
Yeah, and that makes sense. And again, I think, needs analysis and then some sort of pilot would make sense in my mind at this point. I do think you need to do some sort of statistical analysis to understand what that demand may be.
Do you know how much that would cost us?
Not at this point, but I'm sure that we could cost that out.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I want to echo Councillor Gullickson's comments that definitely we need to do that needs analysis. But I just had a detailed question. Were there really 2,200 Uber drivers in Innis? How do you say that? Innisfil? That it says for a community of 40,000, they used 2,200 Uber drivers? Is that the right number?
It was more than that. That was about a year into the program, but they had 2,200 already, and they were signing up additional.
Okay. And may I follow up? I just want to say you have laundry behind you that you need to clean up.
Oh, at least it's winning laundry.
Yes.
Just had to comment. It's so deliberate. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, you did it. Smart.
That was smart to do, exactly. So, along with that needs assessment, given that we already have this service in place for seniors and individuals with mobility issues for a variety of purposes, I guess I would really like to see that we identify exactly who our target audience is here. Like who are we? This is a big step to consider an additional level of service in the city, and I want to make certain that we know who it is that we're trying to serve here with this. So just another aspect with that needs assessment.
Mayor
Yes.
Creasy, if I may just comment on that, again, I agree 100%. And I think part of the report actually indicated that we should seek out some partners as well, that might establish a bit of a base. And so if there was, a desire to move forward, again, talking to Berman University, maybe talking to Wolf Creek School Division, those sorts of partners. I think we talked about Lacombe Foundation. Obviously there's the bigger public piece that needs to happen as well. But if we knew that there was a foundation with some of these groups, but that might, give us the leg up that we need to make that decision.
Right, and that's great. And I'm not saying that let's just not be putting the cart before the horse here. We've got, who is it we're trying to serve before we go getting a bunch of partners on board that are more than willing to show us how to spend a bunch of money that we don't necessarily want to, unless it's absolutely necessary. And there's a proven need for this. Really the only reference we have at this particular point is the Bolt, and unfortunately that was severely underutilized and rather costly for what when it was used. So let's tread carefully with progressing too far on this before identifying our target usage groups. Okay, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I've always still feel that there's more opportunities for revenue generating. For example, very low priority transfers from AHS, which I've expressed to in FCSS, and that really, I don't know if that's part of AHS pursuit, but AHS has, contacted that, and if that would be a revenue generating partner because of even just moving patients around. I guess sometimes like the scheduling, and sometimes I feel like it's not marketed that, okay, with the various other different Royal Oak, and I know they already have, go to the action group, we've had a tour and FCSS and so forth, but I always felt there's always more potential, even with partners as revenue generating as well. And I don't think that's, and Director Duke's been wonderful at promoting Connex on Facebook and so forth, but it's until you have them conversations directly, I don't know, I just don't think it goes anywhere. So yeah, it would be interesting if that list was actually of who are trips are, or different facilities it goes to, and the contact was made more directly rather than them booking is, you know, efficiency of the routes and more direct contacts. It's like, it's kind of after the fact. Like they call Connex booking, but part of the service and efficiency is having that continuous relationship and, you know, boosting the usage more. I just, yeah, always kind of curious about that, so. And I know it's managed within FCSS, but the city actually makes up the difference of what it's required to make it balance. But how much better could it even just be managed to market it? So.
Sorry, Councillor Ross, I would say that was outside of scope from what I was looking at this point. Again, we were looking at the public transit side of things, and maximizing the Connex usage under its current model is outside of what I was looking at. So you may be right on that.
Councillor Golson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Manager LaPointe, I think we put in about $90,000 a year into Connex, is that correct?
80, 90.
The city does?
I think it was 86 last year. I think if we added on the report, I think it was.
Yeah,
86.
and does that include the maintenance of the vehicles and so on? Or is that additional to that?
CAO Gowdy, do you have something to say there?
Excuse me, that includes the maintenance of the vehicles. It does not necessarily include the capital replacement. We've been fortunate enough to receive donations and grants in the past, as well as contributions from Oakland County for capital replacement, but those aren't guaranteed.
So the maintenance is included. I just think that, you know, the comments here comparing to Bolt, which I did too, which probably was a mistake, is incorrect, because you're right now is looking strictly intra-city within the city of Lacombe. That's right.
Yes.
Yep. So it's a totally different service, and until we find out what that is and the demand from the people, and I would think, to the mayor's question, I would hope that our target would be the children and youth of Lacombe, to build that awareness of public transportation before we ever get to anything bigger, because you don't try and educate me to ride transport like a public transport. You educate the kids to do that. I would hope that would be our target.
Yeah, and again, to Mayor Creasy's point, I don't think we can guess at who the potential riders are at this point. I think we need to understand that before taking any sort of step forward. And the one thing that became very clear from the research that was undertaken is every system is very costly. Establishing the need for the investment that it's going to take is paramount at this point.
Thank you, Manager LaPointe. Oh, we've got one more question from Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Are we sure that 86,000 included maintenance? Was that not a grant directly to FCSS to operate?
Yes.
Does it include, you sure? Oh, I'm trying to find it in these, but it's not here.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Speaking on FCSS, what the city of Lacombe makes up is the difference if there is a loss in operating costs. So that would include fuel, maintenance, labor, and so forth. So as I recall from FCSS the last 3 years, is the shortfall is made up by the city.
So I am fairly confident in that. I'm trying to pull up our budgeting software, but
Yeah.
we're not in the usual building, so I will let you know if I find differently.
Very good. Does anyone have any additional questions for Manager LaPointe at this time? We appreciate the report, the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think next up we've got Director Piché is with us as well. And Bill 52, the Recall Act, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yes, before council this evening is a new piece of legislation that has had second reading in the Legislative Assembly called Bill 52, the Recall Act. The purpose of this legislation is intended to strengthen democracy by allowing all Albertans to hold elected officials accountable throughout their term in office and not just at election time. This is done by allowing an Albertan to initiate a process of removing an elected official if they feel that they are not meeting their responsibilities. The process to remove an elected official begins with an application to either the Chief Electoral Officer for the province, a CAO for a municipality, or a school board division secretary for a school board. Once a completed application is finalized, the Albertan can begin collecting signatures for a petition. They have 60 days to collect 40% of all eligible voters' signatures. If the applicant successfully completes the petition and meets all of the eligibility requirements, the next step is determined by which level of government is being recalled. If the recall is for a provincial MLA, the next step is that the Legislative Assembly must vote to see if that elected official will cease to hold office or not. This is completed by a simple majority vote. For a municipal and school board official, if a successful petition has been filed, the CAO or the school board secretary will remove the elected official at the next council or school board meeting. Now, there are concerns about the Recall Act from various organizations. The AUMA has submitted feedback to the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General, who has sponsored this bill. Their concerns focus around the 40% threshold and the ability to collect enough names within that 60 days. Smaller municipalities would not have such an onerous time to collect the signatures. However, larger municipalities could see this as a barrier. Another AUMA concern is the role of the CAO within the recall process. Seeing that council is the CAO's employer, there is a conflict to grant them the authority to administer the recall process by validating the petition. The last concern that the AUMA has is a potential for administrative burdens and costs associated with the process of and validating a recall petition. The Recall Act that Alberta is proposing is based closely to what BC has for legislation, and they've had this in place since 1995. Since 1995, there have only been 26 recall petitions in BC that have been approved, but only 6 of those petitions were returned to Elections BC for verification, and 5 of those 6 did not even have enough valid signatures, and one of them was halted due to a member resigning. Currently, BC is the only province that has recall legislation in Canada. So looking down in the US, there are many states that actually do have recall legislation, but most of them, they use a threshold between 10 and 25% of their previous election voter turnout. They also use registered voters and not eligible voters. They have a lower threshold than the 40% that Alberta is proposing as well. For example, California uses a 12% threshold on their state officials. However, for local governments, they'll use a range between 10 and 30% of registered voters based on the total population of the jurisdiction being recalled. Wisconsin uses a 25% threshold of the number of voters that turned out in the previous election. And Montana requires signatures equal to 10% for state officials, such as their governor, and then uses 20% of the registered voters from a prior municipal or school district election. In the states, there were 315 recall applications in 2020, and out of those, there are only 29 approved. However, there are still 69 applications underway, and 4 of them are still scheduled to be reviewed. The rest of them were either unsuccessful, defeated, and elected officials resigned, or it was a judicial recall. Now, this information is only being provided to council as information only, but if there are any questions, I am happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Director Piche. Anyone, any questions or comments? You're off the hook easy. We appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Director Duke is actually driving, so.
Okay, very good. So the next item up, item 4.3 is the 2020 through 2022 strategic plan updates. And our CEO has finished his certification duties there for the next presenter. You can continue with that.
Thank you. Actually, I will start off by correcting my earlier thing about the connects. I have been able to get into our budget. There is some additional fees for gas fuel and oil, which are covered by the city, as well as the vehicle maintenance and repairs. We also do have a common services recovery and transfer to reserve. Those items total come to $49,000, 20,000 of which is related to that transfer to reserves for the replacement of van. Of course, over 10 years that generate that to replace these vans on the replacement schedule we have, so there still are relying on donations and grants. But my apologies for my earlier misunderstanding.
It's operational.
Yes. So the updated strategic plan, interestingly, this is the first strategic plan update that we've done with a council that is looking to a municipal election in the fall. So I looked back to see what was done in the past, and actually I wasn't able to find much ongoing reporting about the strategic plan to reference. So I will attempt to highlight it the best way I can. Of course, with that gate post looming, it's a different look. It's kind of, I expect you're more focused on what can reasonably be expected to complete before the municipal election and what will likely carry on. And as you can see, some of the work that's going to carry on is some of the work that you've identified as high priority work. So that being the development of key performance indicators to be used by council and administration to measure and track success, maximizing the community value from city-owned properties, safety improvements for at-grade rail crossings, and completion of the fire services. These are pieces of work that have value, and I hope are carried over as priorities into the new council term. I would add to this myself, but I think a focus on some core utilities, roads, and water and sewer, and getting those as efficient as possible, or at least to the national average, I hope is something that is carried forward into the next council term. Part of the reason I want to highlight this is that I think there's great value in having some level of continuity from council to council. Everyone here experienced the transition from a high turnover of council and could see some benefit from there being that continuity. As of today, I have no officially, or not I, sorry, our returning officer, Director Pichet, has no official declarations of nomination from any councillor or member of the public. And of course, those have been open now for about 6 months, and we're less than 6 months from the election. So I hope to see some nominations occur in the next.
As disconcerting as that may be for an administrator, I think given the drastic changes that we saw from the Alberta government on the length of time that there is to provide those, I don't think that I would be necessarily too alarmed, but I appreciate you mentioning that. Councillor Jacobson?
Just out of sheer curiosity, what happens going to the MGA if nobody runs for council? Does municipal affairs step in and govern by technocracy then?
CEO runs the town.
Deadline gets extended.
There is, I believe that municipal affairs steps in and work works with the municipality to generate interest in the local municipal office and have to host by-elections to fill the vacant seats. I certainly hope that's not the case.
We haven't declared someone, our mayor has said he was going to.
Yes, but keep in mind, there's a difference between a public declaration and filing the paperwork.
Oh, gotcha. Just reminding you of your public declaration.
Take it back now.
So the other area I'll highlight is the completed strategies area. I think this was a good change we made last year, where the completed strategies have been compiled into one section. If it were me, I expect I would be considering this kind of a good reference guide for some of the things that were accomplished over the term. And if you would use it for the same, I would encourage you to also look through the more detailed report, because there are a number of items, for example, to review land use bylaw with respect to redevelopment, where 2 of the 3 items have been completed. So you have actually made significant steps there. For example, with the R3 rezoning that Councillor Gullickson brought up to allow detached homes within certain areas of the city, as well as your ongoing work on R4 zoning. And of course, you got a more comprehensive review of the land use bylaw. Is there anything that I can provide for your consideration and discussion of the strategic plan?
Mostly we would like to publish all of the green sheets, all of the accomplishments, so the public can see that we actually did something like that. So it was actually quite refreshing to see all of the items that have been accomplished in concert with administration and council, to see that those important measures that we had in mind have been largely accomplished. Of course, there's, I think, to expect 100% completion would be unrealistic, and we set our bar pretty high, but I would say that by the lengthy list in here, it's been a productive period, and look forward to that continuing. So, does anyone have any comments or questions about any of those items? Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Priest. Just to comment that it is an exceptional, well done job, because this is a thing that a new council set out as, you know, our priorities. Most of us were new at it. It's daunting, but together with administration, we, you know, got this document in order. And then I just really appreciate how administration has kept this in the forefront and kept it a priority to maintain the priorities, as well as we've thrown curveballs since, you know, like adding things, changing things. So I do want to give us all a pat on the back for what this looks like. I've done these for many years, and this isn't always the easiest to have as many, to have it as complete as this. So just kudos to everybody involved is what I just want to say.
Appears to be nothing further on that item. So is Director Duke available to speak yet?
I am, Mayor Creasy.
Wonderful. Welcome, Director Duke. Item 4.4, the committee's review report, number 6 in our series. If you could go ahead, please.
Well, thank you, Mayor Creasy. So tonight for the committee is the committee's review report number 6, which reviews the Affordable Housing Steering Committee, the Council Remuneration Committee, and the DARP, that is the Downtown Area Revitalization Plan Advisory Committee, which is actually a proposed committee to be formalized by Council. So this report, again, is the 6th in a series. This will be committees number 16, 17, and 18 that are reviewed. And the report is coming before Council tonight in the hopes that we'll receive some direction from Council as to your thoughts on potential amendments that are presented. There's a number of options, and then bringing this back to Council at the next meeting potentially for some resolutions if you care to make them. So I'll just review them in summary. The report is attached, and it does have extensive detail on each of the committees, which the public, of course, can also review. All of these three committees deliver municipal services to the city at differing degrees and also advise council in decision-making in the service areas that they cover. They have also accomplished public engagement, of course, at identifiable IAP2 levels. And I'll just going to move ahead to to summarize just each of the committees in turn. So starting with the Affordable Housing Committee, this is an ad hoc committee formed in 2015 to put the city's affordable housing strategy into effect. There are 2 councillor appointments to this committee and approximately 8 hours of meeting time per year, depending on the particular activities that the committee's undertaking. There is no operational funding provided to this committee. Members, of course, are not compensated either. And we have a managerial liaison who is also the administrative support, and that is the manager of community economic development, Guy Lapointe. He does quite a bit of work for the committee in the same way that he did for the Bolt committee, providing not just administrative support, but some technical advice and also research for it. This committee achieves IAP2 public engagement at the collaborate level with elements of empowerment as well, because they have considerable independence in forming which types of projects we might seek out from the community, and also recommendations to council, and which are usually supported in council. So options to amend this include, of course, the usual ceasing to appoint a council member to the committee. In this case, disbanding the committee is an option because it is an ad hoc, which is to say formed for a specific purpose and not intended to be permanent. Converting the committee to a permanent status via bylaw or policy, and seeking input from the committee on its future. Now, I just want to let council know that the committee is actually scheduled to meet tomorrow night with this as one of its topics, because we have not received stakeholder input from this committee on its future. So we wanted to make sure we did that, but rather than do that by survey, we felt that a meeting might be the best way to do that. So I'll pause here and just see if council has any direction on any of these options to amend.
Thanks, Director Duke. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Speaking on this committee hasn't had a purpose to function if we didn't have a budget. So the 400 and something thousand that was distributed to Youth Unlimited for their girls' house and for Tricon for the affordable housing, since that money was dispersed, we haven't met because we don't have a budget to even consider to putting forth to the community. So when there's a budget, then the committee has a purpose. And anyways, like it's just kind of straightforward. Until there's funding by the provincial government, we haven't had a meeting. That's what I'm trying to say. So when there is a grant that's provided by the province that can benefit the community, then the committee has a function and a purpose. And if not, then we haven't had a meeting since that money was dispersed. So,
which is certainly understandable. I think that it'd be nice to have the input from them as a whole as to the future.
Right.
Given that it wasn't ad hoc in nature from the inception. I think it may be wishful thinking to expect there's going to be a great deal of funds allocated for that purpose from the provincial level. In saying that, if it did happen, there's no reason why we couldn't reform it. Maybe at that time. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I don't think we should be in any hurry to disband it because we don't know where those monies will come from. I mean, the federal government will give us some money too at some point. So just an ad hoc committee. I don't think we need 2 councillors on it, that's for sure, going forward. I think one is, but otherwise, yeah, maybe go back to the committee to see what they think. But yeah, we could get an announcement at any time for all we know, right? Especially prior to an election, whether or not to be funding coming. So.
Well, I think there's certainly some value in that, I guess. Are we better off doing that, or are we would it be more productive to reestablish a committee when that happened and perhaps generate some additional interest and buzz about what's going on with that, as opposed to leaving a committee open that by all intents and purposes doesn't necessarily have a chance to meet because of the lack of purpose. I don't know that necessarily sends the right message to the volunteers who serve on boards and committees, in this instance, the Affordable Housing Committee. So it's up to whatever council would prefer. I'm just not totally sold on having committees that aren't necessarily prepared to meet or no definable purposes. It makes it just that much more difficult. Go ahead, sorry.
Anyway, because my only fear with disbanding the committee outright is that when the time does come to put the committee back together, you might have trouble getting volunteers, right? If they're just kind of, if everyone has an understanding that you're an ad hoc committee, you're on this committee, and that you may not meet for a year or so, fine, but there's a good chance you might meet 2 years from now. Are you okay with that? I just, to disband it outright and then try and round up volunteers again, I think might be difficult.
Fair enough. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I do agree with Councillor Connick. Perhaps you meet every quarterly if there's not a budget, even for a meeting of information, because, for example, at my current residence, there's a waiting list. There's a waiting list, Mackenzie. So there is definitely a need for affordable housing. There are representatives on Macomb Foundation and so forth that maybe every 3 months it's a short meeting of information that, you know, on a municipal level and with these other organizations, maybe try to advocate the awareness to the provincial federal government of the still continuous need. And I know private enterprise has reacted to it. Leybourne is obviously going to build, I don't know, immediately this year or 2022, but they've obviously brought forth a presentation to council for an additional 74 apartments based upon the need of the market. So, but I don't know, I agree with Councillor Connick and to Director Duke and Manager Lapointe. Maybe still meet every 3 months as a meeting of information for the other, even with the organizations, because then it may bring forth information to Manager Lapointe as the municipal representative that also can apply or advocate for the need within the city.
Very good. In the meantime, we'll wait and hear back a report from the committee, the entire committee. Very good. Anyone else? Councillor Hitt?
Sorry, just perhaps we've already covered this, but I don't think we quite clearly clarified it, I guess. Sorry, that's awkward. But tomorrow's meeting, I'm assuming one of the questions would be whether should the committee continue that it would not any longer be an ad hoc committee, just because by simple definition it isn't if it's ongoing. When an ad hoc committee is struck, it's for a specific purpose that is meant to end in relative short order. Whereas if the idea is to maintain this committee, then that status should be removed and it should be made a standing committee. So again, I'm assuming that's going to be part of the discussion at tomorrow's meeting. I am curious to see what the members themselves of that committee think about that. But yeah, that is definitely something that needs to be addressed. Ad hoc would not be acceptable if it is to continue. So that would for sure have to change.
Director Duke, everybody's favorite council remuneration committee.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So the Council Remuneration Committee is a committee of just council members. There's 3 elected official appointments. Like the Council Committee of the Whole in that way. And this one is actually struck to update at least once per council term the remuneration policy, council remuneration policy. So it's a minimum of one, and also to address emerging issues. The workshops, the meetings are workshop-like and indeterminate length. There is no operational funding to this committee either, and members again are not compensated for attending. In this case, the managerial liaison is the chief administrative officer, and the administrative supports are the senior manager of financial services and the manager of human resources. It achieves IAP2 public engagement at the inform level. The report details a couple of times when emerging needs have actually caused the committee to have to meet. So in particular, the changes to the federal tax regulation that was going to affect council's net remuneration in the course of this term. And so the committee did meet and examined the situation and made recommendation that council then subsequently adopted. So that's an example of that. Options to amend this committee include adding members of the public, which is actually provided for in the policy to some degree as an option. That would certainly improve the informed level of public engagement if that was to happen. There are a couple of policy amendments that this review identified as potentially required, which are included in the report. And if you have a look at that, you'll see that those are essentially to make in the policy, or at least in some centralized location in the city website, for example, the information about council remuneration, make it readily available to the public. So they really only have one place to go for that. Currently, they have to search in a number of different places, and it would even be a little difficult if they knew where to look to find it and understand it. So that essentially is the main policy amendment that's being recommended. So I'll just pause there and see if council has any direction on this particular committee and any options to amend.
Thank you. So currently on the committee sits myself, Councillor Hibbs, and Connick. Are there any other members of council with a burning desire to sit on that committee? Quite frankly, I'm not surprised, but I still feel obligated to ask. As far as engaging members of the public, myself, I'm kind of, if someone showed an interest in it, I think I'd probably be fine with it. We really do nothing on there that's not open to the public. Any decisions that we do made are readily available to the public, so I would be fine with it. In saying that, I don't know that the effort made in garnering an interested individual would justify the meetings that take place. I think in the last 3 years, they have totaled maybe 20 minutes, half an hour.
We haven't met.
Absolutely.
Maybe I wasn't there.
No, you didn't get there.
Where have we been met?
Yeah, we
Grant
have.
Italian, but
Really?
But anyway, I think that to try and garner some assistance from the public, I don't know that we'll necessarily have to. In this particular case, I don't know that it really serves the community that well. But open to suggestions if anybody has any. Councillor Hibbs?
Just a couple comments. In the memo, it says this committee met again in March 2021. Did I miss that? Because I'm sure that we didn't. That may have been maybe March 2020, or I wasn't invited, because one of those two things happened.
Director Duke, was that March 2020?
You were the only one that was there. I wasn't there.
I apologize, off the top of my head, I can't recall. I don't believe it was in March 2021 though, so it must have been in March 2020.
Because I read that and I thought, oh my, I've missed an appointment. And I looked through everything and I'm like, no, there's clearly no invitation, so. All right.
It really demonstrates how critical this committee is, because all three of us met it and nobody recalls what went on, so.
And then the only other comment that I have is, this is one area that I know that we slightly disagree on, that I do actually really would prefer to have public involvement in that, in this committee. I get it that perhaps be interested, or perhaps they might not find it worthwhile, but I honestly think that we will likely have people that are interested. And it is more, I don't know, it's easier for me to justify to people what our salary is when I feel that I've had direct input by residents. Again, that's just my opinion on things, so I would like us to exercise that option where you can have public members on this committee. I don't think it's a hill to die on or anything. I do understand that our salaries are public and that this committee really only makes recommendations to council, and of course it's council as a whole that, you know, ultimately makes that decision. So of course the public does have an opportunity at that time to provide input. But I do see personally the value in the creation of the recommendation having a public voice at that time. So that would be my only comment. Again, I don't know how the rest of you feel about that, but I just thought I would mention that.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I have a question regarding the salaries. Are they, I understand the county of Lacombe publishes their salaries in their county news. Do we put our salaries out anywhere in the public, in the papers or anything?
Betty?
All public sector accounting guidelines require that all of your salaries are disclosed on the audited financial statements as well as that of the CA. Salary and benefits, they're all published publicly by Municipal Affairs in a database where a member of the public could look up this up.
But it's not, I'm just thinking that that might be something we could do, is to make it real easy for the public to see that this is what we get. Because to me, I think that our salaries are something to be kind of put out there to say, you know, this is really low, like the mayor's salary in comparison to others, and the council's salaries compared to the county is considerably lower, probably a third. So I think that's important to get out to our constituents and say that these salaries are quite low. And we should be proud of it too.
And I think that given it is an election year, having that information available to the public so that they know one way or another for whatever it means to them, I think that's fine to make it available. So they don't have to go digging through the financial statements, which can be a little daunting for some. So yeah, I think that would be an onerous thing for us to prepare a quick little.
Well, even on the
social
the
media
page, or even the page we do in the paper, it could be included there. Or announcements or whatever, because I think it's something that we should be proud of, the zero increases and the relatively low wages compared to other communities.
I see hand up over here. Councillor Kodak.
Thank you, just a couple of comments. In respect to Councillor Hibbs' comments about public engagement, while I see the value of that, I think invariably you're going to find that public in general thinks politicians probably make too much money, period. So I don't know, while I see the value there, I don't know how constructive or how valuable that input would be, because I think invariably I think that people would say, well, you guys make too much money, or they don't realize what we do for the money. So that, yeah, I see your point, but at the same time, I don't know how that would work very well. Unless you've actually been, unless you've been a former counselor or something and you know what the responsibilities are and what the workload is, I don't think you can fully appreciate the value there or whatever the case would be. And as just a quick note, I think we have to meet yet if we're going to tackle the mayor's remuneration prior to the next election. So
Yes.
I'm just, I don't know if that's on the table anymore. Anyways, those are just, in respect to Councillor Gullickson, I think that's a good idea, but then, again, unless you're gonna put comparables up there, people don't realize. You know, unless you're gonna put town of Black Falls or town of Sylvan Lake, I don't think people will just look at a number and go, well, that's nice or great. But like you say, if we are less than other municipalities, fine, unless you're gonna post as other municipalities as well. Yeah, again, I don't know what people would think.
Because when you look at our numbers, they're very low.
But that's great, but yeah, unless you show the other numbers, then.
To add that comparison, I think that's an interesting point.
It might be difficult to do.
Yeah, I think when people appreciate how the numbers are arrived at, when it's taken as an overall averages and comparator communities, much the same methodology is used with, I believe, all of our staff, save one. It's a pretty easy thing to defend. It does come down to a little bit on the communities that you choose to involve in the survey. I think that those numbers certainly can be skewed, but how we've chosen to do it in the past has resulted in a pretty modest payment schedule, I would say, much like Councillor Gulson suggested. But I guess for myself, once again, I have no problem with involving a member of the public. I think that it's a little difficult to get somebody in at this point in time, perhaps for next go around, if that was seen as a possibility. I mean, if this was a case where we were coming up with numbers specifically on our own and not canvassing other communities for their rates, I think that would be very important. Given the methodology we use now, personally, I don't think that it is. But, again, not totally opposed to involving the public, but certainly don't see it as a priority at this point in time. Anyone else? Director Juke.
Mayor Creasy. The final committee to be reviewed tonight is the proposed DARP, or Downtown Area Redevelopment Plan Advisory Committee. This task force, in fact, was formed by administration itself in 2021 to provide stakeholder input into the implementation of the DARP, specifically conception and prioritization of capital projects. When the report with the DARP implementation plan for capital projects was presented to council on April 12th, 2021, a draft terms of reference were included to formalize the committee at the same time. And this is because many aspects of the committee are ongoing and potentially can be ongoing. And the committee itself, as each of the members accepted its position, his or her position, did also indicate an interest in continuing. So there's many aspects of this committee that are to be determined, such as the annual meeting time required. But administration anticipates no operational funding required for 2021 and 2022, although that will be reconsidered at budget time. Members are not expected to be compensated for attendance, however. Again, the managerial liaison and administrative support will be the manager of community economic development and potentially another member of the operations and planning division. The committee achieves IAP2 public engagement at the collaborate level, which is the highest one step short of empowerment. There were in fact elements of empowerment in their works to date. Options to amend the city's current relationship with this committee therefore include formally establishing it as the DARP Advisory Committee with the draft terms of reference included in the April 12th report, amended by some or all of 6 amendments suggested in the review report. I can go over those if council so wishes, but they're mostly nuts and bolts, just items just to make sure that the committee functions appropriately. The second option would be, if that was the case that council would like to do that, is the potential to appoint the existing members of the task force committee to the new committee, plus up to 2 council members if so desired. And of course, the third option is to accept the review of the DARP Advisory Committee as information. So I'll just pause there and see what council might want to do with that committee.
Thank you, Director Juke. Who'd like to start? Councillor Cox, go ahead.
Just full steam ahead. I think this is a terrific committee, much needed. We're going to be doling out this money over the next number of years. I think this is they've got a great group there already. I think, again, one council member who should be sufficient for sure, but yeah, I think this is, we should probably have this committee a few years ago already. We're a little behind there, so yeah, those are my own thoughts.
Which unfortunately it's in place now, we can't turn back the clock, but yeah, that's. Myself, I would see the benefit of an additional council member on it. I think that they've got some very engaged and hard-working crew there that does some good work, so. Anybody else have any thoughts on adjustments to the DART committee? Councilor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. No, not any adjustments. I just think it's a great committee and look forward to their proposals and what they're going to bring forward in the near future. I think it's really good.
Dr. Duke, anything in closing?
No, Mayor Creasy, thank you for council's patience and listening to this further committee review report. And we'll bring this back to you then on June 14th, I anticipate, with incorporating the information and direction that we received tonight. Appreciate your patience listening.
Thank you very much. And under additional information, Chief Gowdy, does the administrative report for us, or no?
I do not.
Okay.
It being a committee meeting, I don't usually prepare one, and I just see it on there.
I was going to say, I thought it was odd that it was on the agenda, but it is here, so I thought I would ask, not a problem. And is there any additional input on any of the items that we've covered this evening so far? Very good. Just for notice for our next meetings, a regular council meeting at 5 p.m. on June 14th, and again on June 28th at 5 p.m. and then into July on the 12th at 5 p.m. all here at this location, so there's no confusion from anyone. I believe that is all of the business that we have tonight, other than an in-camera item. Councilor Hoekstra.
We need to make that motion, Mayor Creasy, to move in camera.
We certainly do.
Okay, make that motion.
Thank you. Notice our motion to move in camera at 6:31. I'll call the vote. All those in favor?